Anna Paulina Luna is doing that, the congresswoman out of Florida. Wow. So she's been doing some digging. I've been doing some digging alongside her. And here's what's really disturbing, and perhaps this should have been the entire lead of the show. What's really, really disturbing right now is who is behind this, because it appears to be China. Yep. CCP. You know what? They've never forgiven us because they think that we had a hand in those Hong Kong protests, and now all of a sudden they're jumping in, trying to get their fair share out in California. And of course, it's a ripe climate to do it in. Anna Paulina Luna releasing this video. Let's listen.
Just found a really great deep dive here from the Data Republican on X. So who is behind all these crazy riots in LA and that will be across the nation? Just like, remember, in the Summer of Love with BLM, remember who's organizing all that stuff? With this specifically is being funded by an individual by the name of Neville Sigman, who actually made his money by pushing communist Chinese propaganda, became a billionaire doing it. He's now funding, and the guy behind all of these protests was also behind and tied to the protests at Columbia University, pushing all of that BS, if you don't remember. And then also, too, if you actually look at the social organization that's putting out these flyers, it's the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which is, and I kid you not, the actual Communist Party. So they're using Hispanics, they're using illegal immigrants, they're trying to hype people up thinking that they care, but they don't care. They would stop illegal immigration. Obama deported people. Why all of a sudden now? It's political.
Yeah, no, she's right. I mean, don't forget, President Obama actually deported the most people. But somehow it's okay when he does it, and it's not okay when Donald Trump tries to do it. I'm confused. Oh, except that it is political. And I suspect nations that are not necessarily our friends are looking at this as an opportunity. Again, China has not forgiven us, well, for a whole lot of things. I mean, you can go all the way back to the Opium Wars, okay? Like they which totally separate discussion at some time, but that was Westerners bringing in pretty bad stuff, right, to their country through a very porous southern border. Gosh, funny how history repeats itself. They haven't forgotten that. They also haven't forgotten any role we may have played in Hong Kong. And don't forget, like, this is what happens, right? We've talked about this. You know, we're all big boys here. And the whole idea has always been, let's avoid actual confrontation, physical confrontation. And so we'll use information. And so there's been an effort to promote the quote unquote American way of life, freedom, democracy, et cetera, all over the world. And so in the name of freedom and democracy, we come in, we step in, and we move things along, shall we say. So China knows that we do. Well, China does the same thing, okay? Like, and so does everyone else. So they're looking at this as a ripe opportunity. And so what I would just say to Gavin Newsom is, eyes wide open, buddy, okay? Like, open your eyes, recognize what's going on. Listen to Anna Paulina Luna and listen to what we're saying. Because when she mentioned this name, she mentioned this guy, Neville Roy Sigman. And I was like, wait a second, I know that name. And it turns out there was a huge expose on him back in 2023 by the New York Times. Because you see, his money is what goes to things like this. Literally, the Communist Party. The Party for Socialism and Liberation, PSL, it is known as. Here we go. This is just a Wikipedia explanation. Ideologies, communism, Marxism, Leninism. I mean, and the guy that is funding it is a billionaire. Well, he sold his company for like 700 and some odd $1 million. So almost a billionaire. If he invested it smartly, he probably is. Although he's investing it in all these various things, PSL and a few others along the way. And it turns out that the Party for Socialism and Liberation is actually a big part of what's going on with these protests in Los Angeles. Okay, so here's the guy. He apparently lives in Shanghai now. And he has an office in the same building where the CCP is running its propaganda out of. So the New York Times did this huge expose, 2023. Okay, so this is not a conservative outlet, right? This is the New York Times. Daily Beast did it too, okay? They're definitely not conservative over at Daily Beast. U.S. tech mogul bankrolls pro-Russia, pro-China news network. In other words, these guys are the SHI you-know-what disturbers, and they're trying to get a message out that's pro-China all over the country. I want to go to the article. So this is what jogged my memory. As soon as Anna Paulina Luna said that, I was like, wait a second. I remember that guy. I remember this story. And sure enough, back in, I guess this was updated in August 10th, 2023, they wrote about a global web of Chinese propaganda that was being led by a U.S. tech mogul. It says the Times unraveled a financial network that stretches from Chicago to Shanghai and uses American nonprofits. Great. So these guys get tax deductions too. It's coming at the expense of you and me. All these NGOs, right, to push Chinese talking points worldwide. Heck, they might not even be getting some of this USAID money. I mean, we might actually be paying for this. That's the crazy thing. So in this article, they start off by talking about how there was this protest in London, and it was this group called No Cold War. And apparently some people came along that were activists supporting the democracy movement in Hong Kong. And the No Cold War people started fighting with them, and it turned into a whole thing. And it turned out the No Cold War movement is one of these Neville Sigman operations. You know, he said, oh, no, you know, like, I'm not deliberately trying to promote a Chinese agenda, etc. I've got his quote here where he defends himself. But his friends have all said, yeah, no, he's a Marxist. He's a communist. He totally is. And you know that China wants to basically keep us at odds with ourselves, because the more we're at odds with ourselves, well, the less of a threat we are to them. So this was fascinating. Okay, let's get into this, guys, because this is really serious. I'm going to just blow this up on the screen so I can see it as well as you. All right, take a look. In fact, a New York Times investigation found it is part of a lavishly funded influence campaign that defends China and pushes its propaganda. That was the group in London. At the center is a charismatic American millionaire named Neville Roy Sigman, who is known as a socialist benefactor of the far left causes. Yikes. What is less known and is hidden among a tangle of nonprofit groups and shell companies is that Mr. Sigman works closely with the Chinese government media machine and is financing its propaganda worldwide. Gary's metal detecting. Thank you. Send. He wants more troops heading in. Thank you for the generosity. Appreciate it here on independent media. What's frightening here is that this guy Sigman is using independent media alongside China and whoever else to try and push out their agenda. So from a think tank in Massachusetts, the Times writes, to an event space in Manhattan, from a political party in South Africa to news organizations in India and Brazil, the Times tracked hundreds of millions of dollars to groups linked to Mr. Sigman that mix progressive advocacy with Chinese government talking points. I mean, even Code Pink. Okay, Code Pink, that's his wife. They got married in 2017. You see her? That's his wife. She's the founder of Code Pink. And it turned out Code Pink used to be really anti-China until she hooked up with him. And now they get all their money from him. So there's this American anti-war group, Code Pink, and it morphed over time. It used to criticize China's rights record, but now it's defending its internment of the predominantly Muslim Uyghurs, which human rights experts have said is a crime against humanity. Okay, all right, so let's take a step back. Like, let's understand what's really happening in California. One, yes, we've had a lot of people coming here illegally. That is not good, never should have happened. There is a definite effort by the Trump administration to get people to self-deport. Hopefully they're successful with that. But two, what do you think this is about? I mean, some people are pointing out Jackie Mack, Soros, yes, and I've seen ties to Soros, but this guy really got my attention just because, you know, he's sitting there in Shanghai, like, and the New York Times is like, this is what he does. This is now his business, selling Chinese propaganda and using, I guess, independent creators, so to speak, and these NGOs and all these advocacy groups to do it. Whoa, okay, so hey, guys, Gavin, listen to Anna. Ana Luna Polina is all over this, and you need to focus on what actually matters here right now, because it's about protecting the country. We need to be united in our protection of the country. We need to be united in that we're not going to allow this craziness, okay? And yet, don't forget that king thing. Remember what I was telling you about the king thing? This is important because the California Congressman Garamendi, he's using this king bite. This is straight out of the propaganda coming straight from the Chinese. Watch.
And taking control of the National Guard, federalizing it, and saying he's going to double the number of Guards members who are here on the ground. In your mind, do you think this is just about immigration enforcement and creating law and order, or is there something else going on here?
Well, clearly there's something else going here. As was just reported, the LA police and the sheriff's department have the situation under control. The federalization of the National Guard and then bringing in the Marines is something different. This is about Trump pretending that he is the king of this nation, that he has the ultimate power and authority to do anything he wants to do, regardless of law, regardless of tradition, and regardless of the tradition of the state governor in California and every other state really controlling their own National Guard.
I mean, unless Gavin's just getting played. Do you hear the use of the word king? Remember that, okay? Because guess what? There's a big king thing going on. Take a look. On the 14th, this week, here's their newest, latest, and greatest. In America, we don't do kings. They've even got a little song that goes with it. I'm going to spare you. I'm looking out for you, okay? I'm looking out for you. In America, we don't do kings. The corruption has gone too far. No thrones, no crowns, no kings. So this is the talking point du jour, okay? And this is, again, these are these nonprofits. And you've got to question who is behind this. On June 14th, we rise up. Find an event near you on the map below. There's going to be a whole nationwide thing going down because they're all going to stand in protest. Maybe Whoopi will be there. To these kings, another one, okay, about no kings. On June 14th, Flag Day, President Trump wants tanks in the streets and made-for-TV display of dominance for his birthday. A spectacle meant to look like, here, I'm losing my place. Meant to look like strength. There we go. But real power isn't staged in Washington. It rises up everywhere. You see what's happening. This is all about them exercising their rights against Donald Trump. Now, don't get me wrong, right? Again, we all have a First Amendment right to speak out. And you know how passionately I care about that. But you know what makes me nervous? When we get the Chinese trying to influence our First Amendment. And so you know what the answer to that is. The answer to bad speech is more speech, which is why it's important that you're here. It's important that we have a very civil conversation where we actually digest what's real, what's not. What is real right now? Yeah, there are a lot of people out protesting in the streets. And from the images I've seen, it is not good. But what's also real is that there are a group of actors on the international stage, including countries overseas, that want to do us harm. So Ana Paulina Luna, I commend her for taking that leadership and getting right out in front of it. I saw it last night. I actually spoke with one of my team members who knows her well, and I was like, wow, Ana's really getting out in front of that. And I said, but I know that name. I know that name. How do I know that name? I know that name because I'll credit the New York Times and you and the Daily Beast, okay? So you know what? It didn't come from the conservative media. It actually came from the lefties. And they're pointing out that this guy has Chinese propaganda that he's putting out all over the world. And this is what is tied to what's going on right now here in our country. And that is wrong. I mean, it's unbelievably wrong. Remember, who's the congressman with Fang? Swalwell. Look, it happens, okay? They can infiltrate. We can't be infiltrated. We don't want to be infiltrated. We got to get rid of this kind of propaganda being funded from overseas actors that do not want to see us succeed. Because we are unstoppable. They got to be looking at this like, wow, right? Wow. Speaking of chaos and being unstoppable. Have you seen the market? Have you seen gold prices? Let's take a look at gold today. It's like my daily check on gold, right, guys? By the way, we're fully independent here on the Trish Regan Show. There's no Chinese money coming in here. Or Russian or anything else like that. But, hey, I like to make sure that you guys are all over your investments. It's partly why I started my own financial research company, 76research.com. We can talk about that later because our portfolios are killing it. And we got a lovely, lovely note from one of our subscribers, one of the founding club members here. So I want to tell you about that. But before I do, first of all, over to gold prices and the market overall, which is trading higher today. I thought it would. I mean, it's really amazing in the face of all this. I'll tell you, investors, they're keeping their calm and they're cool about them. And you got everything moving up except for gold. Actually, it's down 0.3%, still sitting near an all-time high. But I'll tell you, that's when I always go in. I'll buy a little bit more today. I always buy when it's going down. If you're interested in buying gold and also alongside it getting up to $15,000 worth of free silver from our show sponsor, American Heart for Gold, I encourage you to go over to trishlovesgold.com to get more information. I encourage you to text Trish to 655-321-8444-95-1115. Some of our regular listeners here, they know the drill, but text my name to 65532 and they'll give you the full spiel on how you can qualify for up to $15,000 in free silver.